My wife's behavior is absolutely terrifying. I'm 23, and I love my wife, Claire, more than anything. But there are times, more often than I'd like to admit, when she terrifies me. It's not that she's physically intimidating. It's more about the way she acts. There's this strange, low tone she uses sometimes, a mix of seduction and menace. It doesn't turn me on, though. If anything, it gives me the chills. Then there's her fascination with gore. Claire has been watching violent content for years and is completely desensitized to it. She even shares these wild, dark fantasies about what she'd do to people she dislikes. It's unsettling, to say the least. Lately, I've been trying to wrap my head around her hypersexuality and occasional sociopathic tendencies. Combined with everything else, it's enough to make me wonder how I'm supposed to handle it all. Our routine doesn't help my nerves either. Every night, I come home from work, make dinner, and unwind with some YouTube or a game. Claire, on the other hand, has this habit of picking the lock to our front door instead of using the doorbell or keys. Yes, you read that right. She picks the lock. She sneaks in, stands silently behind me, and waits until I notice her. It's like she's trying to spook me on purpose. Sometimes, she'll say things like, "You're doing good," or "interesting," in that eerie tone of hers. I've confronted her about it, and she admitted she does it for my reaction. She finds it funny. The lockpicking thing isn't even the most unnerving part of her behavior. Once, when I was dealing with intense leg cramps, I shouted for her help. She came over but didn't do anything. She just sat there with a thin smile on her face. When I yelled, "What are you waiting for?" she calmly replied, "It's cute watching you in pain." That moment really stuck with me. Claire's behavior has a way of leaving me speechless at times. It's not just the lockpicking or her unsettling comments. It's the way she tests boundaries. For instance, she never outright asks for intimacy. Instead, she just assumes it's going to happen unless I set a clear boundary. I've had to put my foot down more times than I can count, telling her no when I'm not in the mood. She respects it, but it's exhausting having to assert myself constantly. And then there's the way she dresses at home. Claire has a habit of wearing clothes that are, let's say, very revealing. She knows it makes me uncomfortable, but she doesn't stop. It's like she enjoys seeing how far she can push things. I try to brush it off, telling myself it's just her personality, but it's not always easy. There have been other moments, too, that have left me questioning how to deal with her. She once threatened to harm someone, a homeless woman's child, no less. It came out of nowhere, and I couldn't believe she even said it. And while she claims it was just an empty threat, it shook me to my core. She's also acted out violently before. There was the time she stabbed a rabid dog. In fairness, it was self-defense, but the ease with which she handled it made me realize just how desensitized she is to violence. And then there are the stories of her almost getting into trouble for fighting with people. She swears she got away with it every time, but I can't help wondering if her luck will run out one day. The scariest part of all? She doesn't shy away from admitting she likes watching me cry. There's something about my vulnerability that fascinates her, and while she doesn't outright cause it, she seems to savor it when it happens. It's a dynamic that's hard to explain and even harder to navigate. One of the most unsettling aspects of my relationship with Claire is what happens when she's drunk. On rare occasions, she'll drink way too much, sometimes up to 5 bottles of wine. By that point, she can barely stand, but she'll still try to initiate intimacy. It's not romantic or playful, it's aggressive and clumsy. She'll throw herself at me, sometimes trying to climb on top of me. Thankfully, I'm stronger and can easily move her aside or hold her still until she calms down. It's more sad than threatening, but it's still something I wish I didn't have to deal with. Claire's hypersexuality isn't the only issue tied to her past. According to her therapist, much of her behavior stems from trauma. It's clear she's carrying a lot of pain, but that doesn't make it easier to handle the way it manifests. She can be impulsive and, at times, downright chaotic. She's tried to physically confront people more than once, and while she hasn't been arrested, it feels like it's only a matter of time before something escalates. Despite all of this, I know she loves me. I've heard her talk to other people about how much I mean to her, and in her own way, she shows it every day. But there's no denying that our relationship has its challenges. Some days, I feel like I'm living in the plot of a psychological thriller or a Yandra anime, trying to figure out how to fix her without losing myself in the process. The truth is, I don't want to leave Claire. I see the good in her, and I believe she's capable of change. But sometimes, I wonder if I'm fooling myself. How do you help someone who doesn't fully recognize the harm they're causing? It's a question I think about constantly, especially during nights like this one. The lockpicking habit was the first thing I knew I had to address. Claire doesn't have a copy of the keys because I've been too lazy to get one made. She claims she lockpicks the door for fun and loves watching me jump when she sneaks up behind me. But the truth is, it freaks me out every time. One night, after she did it again, I finally decided to talk to her about it. We sat down, and I told her how much it scared me. To my surprise, she listened. She said she'd stop, for now, but added something cryptic. You should keep your guard up, though. I have no idea what she meant by that, but it didn't exactly ease my nerves. The next day, I finally went and got her a copy of the keys. Hopefully, that puts an end to her lockpicking adventures. During that same conversation, Claire admitted that a lot of her behavior stems from frustration. She told me that my tendency to avoid intimacy makes her feel rejected, and she didn't know how to handle it. That was a hard pill to swallow, but I realized she had a point. I'd been so focused on keeping boundaries that I hadn't considered how my distance might be affecting her. Her therapist confirmed what I'd suspected. Claire's hypersexuality and other behaviors are tied to her past trauma. It's something she'll likely have to work through for the rest of her life. But understanding where it comes from doesn't make it easier to live with. I asked her to tone down some of the more extreme behaviors, like the threats and the aggression. And while she seemed to take it seriously, I'm not entirely convinced she'll follow through. After our talk, Claire offered to cook dinner for the first time in ages. It wasn't great. I've always been the one to handle the cooking, but I appreciated the effort. Maybe this is her way of showing she's willing to meet me halfway. It's a small step, but it's something. At the end of the day, I know this isn't a relationship most people would understand. Claire has her demons, but I see the person beneath them. The person who loves me in her own unique way. I don't have all the answers, and I don't know what the future holds. But for now, I'm choosing to stay. I just hope I can help her find the peace she deserves. Wife demands my son's paycheck be split with her kid. Life at my house has been a bit of a roller coaster lately, and I mean the kind of messy that's hard to clean up. Here's the situation. I have two sons living at home. There's my biological son, Adam, who's 17, and my stepson, Ryan, who's 19. Both of them have part-time retail jobs and started working around the same time, though Ryan got his job a little earlier since he's older. Now, here's where things get tricky. When Adam started earning paychecks, I decided to stash away 30% of his earnings. It might sound strict, but I wasn't just hoarding his money for no reason. I wanted to teach him the value of saving, while secretly building a fund for him to use on something important, like a car. Adam knew I was taking a portion of his income, but I never told him the full extent of what I was doing. It was meant to be a surprise, something to help him later in life. My wife, Laura, knew about the arrangement. We keep our finances separate due to her past experiences with money and relationships, so I never pushed for us to combine everything. She was fine with the plan and didn't object to me saving for Adam in this way. Fast forward to now, and Adam is close to turning 18. He's been dreaming about getting his own car and saving whatever he can from his remaining paycheck. A few days ago, we sat down to discuss how much he'd managed to save, and that's when I revealed the surprise. I showed him the extra money I'd been setting aside, and his reaction was priceless. He was so thrilled that he jumped up and hugged me like I just handed him the keys to the car. But, as you might have guessed, not everyone was thrilled. Ryan overheard the conversation and wasn't happy. He felt like I was playing favorites. To make matters worse, Laura suggested I split Adam's car fund with Ryan to make things fair. That idea completely floored me. When Laura brought up splitting Adam's car fund with Ryan, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She said it was about fairness, but I didn't see how taking money I'd saved from Adam's earnings and giving it to Ryan made sense. I reminded her that she'd had the same opportunity to save for Ryan if she wanted to, and that my decision to set aside money for Adam was something I'd taken upon myself, not something we'd planned as a couple. But Laura wasn't backing down. She argued that since Adam's college tuition was covered by his grandparents, it gave him an unfair advantage. She felt that splitting the car fund would help level the playing field for Ryan. To me, though, the two things weren't even related. The money for Adam's tuition wasn't something I controlled, and it didn't seem fair to penalize him for that by taking away the savings I'd built up for him. Adam, for his part, stood his ground. He was adamant that no one should touch the money from his paychecks, especially since I'd matched his savings without asking for his input. He saw it as something we'd worked on together, his hard work and my guidance, and he didn't think Ryan had any claim to it. The situation quickly escalated. Laura's family and some of our friends started chiming in, turning what began as casual comments into full-blown arguments. Some joked about it at first, but it became clear that they thought I was showing favoritism. The constant remarks started getting under my skin, and I could feel the tension at home building every day. At that point, I knew I had to address it, but I wasn't sure how. On one hand, I wanted to stand my ground and protect the fund I'd built for Adam. On the other, I didn't want to create a bigger divide between Ryan and me, or between Laura and me, for that matter. It was becoming a no-win situation, and I felt stuck. Things took a turn for the worse not long after. One day at work, Ryan came across a post online about the situation, and it set him off. When Laura found out, she packed her bags and went to stay with her sister. During our heated discussions leading up to this, she said some things I couldn't unhear, things that felt like lines had been crossed. I'd always tried my best to treat both boys fairly. I've been the one covering most of the household expenses, including the mortgage, and I made sure Ryan felt included and supported. But now, it felt like all of that was being ignored in favor of this one issue. Laura even demanded that if I wanted her to consider coming back, I'd have to buy Ryan a car just like Adam's. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This is ridiculous," I told her. "I'm not going to treat a 19-year-old like he's a toddler who needs the same toy as his brother just to keep him happy." "It's not about toys," she snapped. "It's about making him feel like he belongs. You're supposed to make him feel welcome, not like he's just a guest." I tried to explain that I've always done my best to treat both boys with care and respect, but this wasn't about fairness, it was about manipulation. "What you're asking for isn't reasonable," I said. "It's not fair to Adam, and it's not teaching Ryan the right lessons." Her response was cold. "If you can't see why I'm asking for this, maybe we do need time apart." With that, she hung up. The house has been eerily quiet ever since, but not in a peaceful way. It feels like the calm before a storm, and I can't help but wonder what's coming next. The next time I heard from Laura, she hit me with a new demand, one that left me completely floored. She called and said, "If you can't afford to buy Ryan a car like Adam's, then you should at least ask your parents to pay for his college tuition." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to ask my parents to pay for Ryan's college? How does that even make sense?" I asked. "It's about keeping things balanced," she insisted. "Adam is probably going to get help from them anyway. It's only fair that Ryan gets the same." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Laura, them helping Adam, their grandson, is one thing. Asking them to pay for Ryan, who they barely know, is a completely different ballgame." "It's just money," she replied, as if that made it reasonable. "They can afford it. This would show you care about Ryan just as much as Adam." "That's not their responsibility," I said firmly. "You can't just decide that someone else should pay for your son's education." Her tone grew sharper. "Well, I think it's worth asking. If you don't, it just shows where your priorities are." At that point, I ended the call. There was no reasoning with her. It felt like I was dealing with a completely different person, someone who'd turned every interaction into a demand or a guilt trip. After hanging up, I sat there trying to process it all. It felt like my marriage was unraveling faster than I could keep up, and every conversation pushed us further apart. Meanwhile, Adam had started to pick up on the tension. He'd overheard parts of my phone calls and seen the heated text messages popping up on my phone. I tried to shield him from the drama, but he's smart. He knows something big is going on, and it's put him in an awkward position. He doesn't want to see our family split up, but he also doesn't want to lose the car fund he's worked so hard for. I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. If I give in, I'm setting a precedent for more unreasonable demands. But if I stand firm, I risk pushing Laura further away. No matter what I choose, someone's going to get hurt. It didn't take long for everything to come to a head. After weeks of escalating arguments and mounting demands, I realized something had to change. The constant stress, the manipulation, and the impossible expectations were taking a toll on me, and I knew I couldn't keep going like this. After speaking with close friends and a counselor, I made the decision to file for divorce. It wasn't an easy choice. I felt a mix of relief, guilt, and sadness as I started the process. But as I looked back on everything we'd been through, it became clear that staying together wasn't healthy for either of us, or for the kids. I'd spent too much time trying to dodge the next demand or argument, and it was time to break free from that cycle. When I served Laura the papers, her reaction was intense. She accused me of being selfish, of not caring about her or Ryan, and of giving up on our marriage. The conversation quickly turned personal, and the things she said were deeply hurtful. But I stayed calm and stood by my decision. This isn't about being selfish, I told her. It's about creating a healthier future for me and Adam. We can't keep living like this. Since then, the house has been quieter, almost eerily so. But there's also a sense of peace I haven't felt in a long time. Adam has been my rock through all of this. We've spent countless hours talking, not just about the big changes but also about the little things in life. Watching him handle everything with such maturity has been a source of strength for me. Now that the divorce is finalized, I feel like I'm finally stepping into a new chapter of my life. I've started rediscovering hobbies I'd put on hold, reconnecting with friends, and focusing on my relationship with Adam. We've even started working on small projects together, like building a model train set. A reminder that there's still joy to be found, even after tough times. Looking back, I don't regret the choices I've made. They weren't easy, but they were necessary. My focus now is on moving forward and creating a better life for both Adam and me. It's not going to be perfect, but for the first time in a while, I feel like I'm heading in the right direction.